The blizzard came down like God's own fury across the Dakota Territory, turning the world into a howling white void. Captain James Thornton stumbled through knee-deep snow, his Union coat doing little against the February cold of 1876. The war had ended 11 years ago, but he still wore the tattered blue like a second skin, a reminder of everything he'd survived and everything he'd lost. His horse had thrown a shoe 3 miles back. Now the animal limped beside him, both of them half frozen, both of them dying by degrees. James had left Fort Abraham Lincoln 2 weeks ago with discharge papers in his pocket and no destination in mind. 34 years old, nowhere to go, no one waiting. The life he'd buried deep during the war, the capacity to feel, to want, to love, remained in its grave. Before we continue this journey through the frozen Dakota wilderness, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and leave a like on this video. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Now let's return to James and discover what awaits him in the storm. Through the white curtain ahead, a shape emerged, not a building, but teepee, its buffalo hide walls dark against the snow. Then another, a small winter camp, maybe 5 lodges total, smoke rising from the smoke holes despite the wind. James knew he should turn away. Relations between the Army and the Lakota had grown tense after the government ordered all tribes onto reservations. He was a white man, a soldier, stumbling into their winter refuge. But his legs wouldn't carry him another mile. He'd freeze before dawn. He approached the nearest lodge, horse trailing behind. Before he could announce himself, the entrance flap opened. 2 women stood in the firelight within. The first was perhaps 25, tall and striking, with long black hair in 2 braids, her doeskin dress decorated with intricate quillwork. Her dark eyes assessed him with the sharp intelligence of someone who'd learned to read danger quickly. The second woman was younger, maybe 20, with the same high cheekbones and proud bearing, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Please," James said in halting Lakota, words he'd picked up during his years on the frontier. "Shelter, storm." The older woman's eyes narrowed. She spoke rapidly in Lakota, but then the younger one touched her arm, said something soft and pointed at his horse. The older woman stepped aside. "Come." James led his horse to a spot near the other lodge where several ponies huddled together, then returned. The warmth inside the teepee hit him like a physical blow. A fire burned in the center, smoke rising through the opening above. Buffalo robes lined the floor. Dried meat hung from the lodge poles. "Sit," the older woman said, gesturing to a spot by the fire. Her English was clear but accented. "I am Wakingila. This is my sister, Petesungwing." "James," he managed through chattering teeth. "James Thornton." Petesungwing brought him a bowl of something hot, soup thick with meat and wild turnips. He wrapped his frozen hands around it, feeling nothing at first, then pins and needles as sensation returned. "Soldier," Wakingila said. It wasn't a question. Was. Discharged 2 weeks ago. And now? Now nothing. No family, no home. Something shifted in her expression, but she said nothing. Petes knelt beside him and began unlacing his boots. His feet were white, the beginning of frostbite on 2 toes. "She needs to warm them," Wakingila explained. "It will hurt." It did. Petesungwing rubbed his feet between her palms, her touch firm and methodical. James gritted his teeth against the burning sensation as circulation returned. "You are alone," Joaquinella said, watching him. "We are alone. Our husbands died in the fight at Rosebud Creek last summer. The tribe moved to join Sitting Bull. We chose to stay. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring them back." She paused. "But you understand loss. I see it in your eyes." James didn't answer. What could he say? That he'd watched his best friend die at Shiloh? That he'd held his younger brother as he bled out at Gettysburg? That he'd learned to bury every feeling so deep it couldn't hurt anymore? Patesong Wing finished with his feet and sat back. She said something to her sister in Lakota. "She says you can stay until the storm passes." Joaquinella translated. "Maybe 3 days, maybe more. I have nothing to pay you with. We don't want payment." Joaquinella's eyes held his. "But if you stay, you work. We need wood cut, meat brought in, horses tended. Winter is hard for 2 women alone." "I can do that." "Then sleep. You'll need strength tomorrow." They gave him buffalo robes near the fire. James lay down, his body screaming with exhaustion, but sleep didn't come easily. He watched the 2 women on the other side of the fire, speaking quietly in their language. The firelight caught the planes of their faces, the graceful movements of their hands. Joaquinella glanced at him once, and their eyes met across the flames. Something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. The acknowledgement of shared loneliness. The storm lasted 4 days. On the first morning, James woke before dawn to find Patesong Wing already up, feeding the fire. She smiled shyly when she saw him watching, then offered him hot tea made from roots and bark. Joaquinella emerged from her sleeping robes like a warrior preparing for battle, all efficiency and purpose. "Come," she said, "I'll show you what needs doing." The wind had died to occasional gusts, but snow still fell steadily. Joaquinella led him to a stand of cottonwoods at the camp's edge. "We need firewood. The axe is there." She started to turn away, but James caught her arm gently. "Joaquinella, thank you for not leaving me to die." She looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. Patesong Wing wanted to help. She has a soft heart. She paused. "I am more careful. The soldiers have not been kind to our people." "I know." James released her. "I won't hurt you, either of you. I swear it." Words are wind. Show me with actions. She walked away, her back straight, head high. James watched her go, then picked up the axe and began to chop. By midday, he'd cut enough wood to last a week. His muscles burned with the good ache of honest work, the first purposeful thing he'd done since leaving the fort. When he returned to the teepee, Patesong Wing had food ready, roasted venison and corn cakes with berries. "You work hard," she said in careful English. "Like you are running from something." James paused, a piece of meat halfway to his mouth. "Maybe I am." Joaquinella entered, snow dusting her shoulders. She'd been checking on the horses. "Running doesn't work. I tried. The grief follows anyway." That night they sat around the fire, and Joaquinella began to talk about her husband, Tatanka Wangila, who'd been a fearless warrior and gentle father to the nephew they'd raised. About how the soldiers had come to their village 3 years ago, during the peaceful winter, guns blazing, killing women and children. "We survived," she said, her voice flat. "But something in me died that day. When Tatanka Wangila fell in battle last summer, I felt nothing, just empty." Patesong Wing spoke then, her English slower. "My husband Haehong was Tatanka Wangila's brother. They died together. Sometimes I wake up and forget they are gone. Then I remember, and it is like dying all over again. James found himself speaking without meaning to. At Gettysburg, I held my brother while he bled out. He was 19. He asked me to tell our mother he was sorry for leaving the farm. But our mother had died of fever the winter before, and I couldn't tell him that. So I lied. I said she'd be proud of him. Silence stretched between them, heavy with shared pain. "You carry ghosts," Joaquinilla said finally. "Like us." "Yes. Maybe that's why you're here. The spirits brought you to people who understand." On the third day, the snow stopped. James spent the morning hunting, tracking deer through the fresh powder. His skills, honed during countless campaigns, served him well. He brought down a young buck near the creek, and pride surged through him, the first positive emotion he'd felt in months. When he dragged the carcass back to camp, both women were waiting. Pitessingwing clapped her hands with delight, but it was the slight smile on Joaquinilla's face that made his heart skip. They spent the afternoon butchering the deer together. Joaquinilla showed him how to properly tan the hide, her hands moving with practiced skill. Several times their fingers brushed as they worked, and each time James felt a jolt of awareness he'd thought long dead. "You have good hands," Joaquinilla said, not looking at him. "Strong but careful. Tatanka Wangila had hands like that. I'm not trying to replace him. I know." She finally met his eyes. "But you are starting to feel like you belong here, and that frightens me." Patungwin, working nearby, spoke up. "Sister, maybe we are allowed to feel again. Maybe the spirit sent him so we could remember what it is to not be alone. Alone is safer. Alone is cold." Patungwin's voice was firm. "I am tired of cold." That night, a pack of wolves circled the camp, drawn by the smell of fresh meat. James grabbed his rifle and stepped outside, but Joaquinilla was already there, bow in hand. "I can handle them," he said. "So can I. I've been protecting this camp for months." They stood side by side in the darkness, watching yellow eyes gleam at the camp's edge. James fired a shot over the wolves' heads, and they scattered, but not before the largest one circled back, bold and hungry. Joaquinilla's arrow flew true, taking the wolf in the shoulder. It yelped and fled. She lowered her bow, breathing hard. "Good shot," James said. "I do what needs doing." But her hands trembled slightly. Without thinking, James reached out and steadied them with his own. "You're not alone anymore, Joaquinilla. Not while I'm here." She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. In the moonlight, her eyes shimmered. "How long will you be here, soldier?" "As long as you'll have me. We barely know you." "Then let me stay. Let me prove I'm worth knowing." She pulled away, but gently. "I cannot promise anything. My heart, it is still healing. I'm not asking for promises, just a chance." The fourth day dawned clear and brutally cold. James was mending a broken harness when Pitsongwing approached, unusually hesitant. "James, I need to ask you something. Anything. Will you teach me to shoot with the gun?" He looked up surprised. "Your sister." "My sister is an excellent shot with a bow." "But guns are the future. If more soldiers come, if bad men come, I want to protect us." The fear in her eyes was real. James had heard the stories of renegade trappers who preyed on isolated native camps, of soldiers who saw lone Indian women as easy targets. "I'll teach you, and Joaquinilla too, if she wants." She will not admit she wants, but she does. He was right. That afternoon, both women joined him on the frozen creek bank. James started with basic safety, then showed them how to hold the rifle, how to sight down the barrel, how to absorb the recoil. Patangwin took to it naturally, her hunter's instincts translating well. Joaquinula was more hesitant, her pride warring with her unfamiliarity with the weapon. "I feel foolish," she muttered after missing her third shot. "You're not foolish. You're learning." James stepped behind her, adjusting her stance, his hands on her shoulders. "Breathe out as you squeeze the trigger. Don't jerk it." She fired. The bottle they'd set up exploded. Joaquinula's whoop of triumph was pure and unguarded, the first time James had heard her truly joyful. She spun to face him, face alight, and impulsively threw her arms around his neck. The embrace lasted only a second before she realized what she'd done and pulled back, embarrassed. But James had felt her heart pounding against his chest, had caught the scent of sage and wood smoke in her hair. "Sorry," she said. "I forgot myself." "Don't apologize for joy. You've earned it." That night, the three of them sat closer around the fire than before. Pate Sangwing told stories of her childhood, of playing in summer meadows and swimming in cold streams. Joaquinula added details, the two of them building the tale together, their laughter filling the teepee. James watched them, something cracking open in his chest. Not the sharp pain of grief, but something warmer. Possibility. "Your turn," Joaquinula said, catching him staring. "Tell us a story." "I don't have happy ones." "Then tell us a true one." So he did. He told them about growing up on a farm in Ohio, about his mother's garden and his father's gentle hands with horses, about his brother's laugh and his sister's singing, about the day they got news of Fort Sumter and how everything changed. "Where is your sister now?" Pate Sangwing asked. "Married to a banker in Cleveland. We haven't spoken in 3 years. She said I came back from the war a different person." She wasn't wrong. Joaquinula leaned forward. "You are not so different, I think. Just buried. Like a seed in winter, waiting." "Waiting for what?" "Spring." Her eyes held his. "Waiting for a reason to grow again." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. A week passed, then 2. James stopped talking about leaving. The camp became a world unto itself. The three of them falling into rhythms that felt ancient and right. He learned to speak more Lakota, and they improved their English. Joaquinula taught him to make moccasins and repair the teepee when wind threatened to tear the hides. Pisangwing showed him which plants could heal wounds and which could kill. In return, he brought in meat, fixed what was broken, stood watch at night. But more than that, he brought laughter back into their home. Bad jokes and silly faces until Pisangwing giggled like a girl. Earnest questions about their customs that made Joaquinula smile despite herself. One evening as they worked together preparing dinner, Pisangwing spoke in Lakota to her sister. Joaquinula's response was sharp. "What did she say?" James asked. Joaquinula wouldn't meet his eyes. "She says we're like a family. I told her not to be foolish." "Why's that foolish?" "Because you are white. We are Lakota. Because you will leave when spring comes. Because," her voice broke, "because I cannot lose someone again. I cannot." James set down the knife he'd been using. "Joaquinula, look at me." She did, tears threatening. "I'm not leaving unless you tell me to go. I've found something here I thought I'd lost forever." He gestured around the teepee, at the life they'd built. "Purpose, peace, people who see me as more than just a soldier or a ghost. I've found." He paused, the truth sitting heavy on his tongue. "I've found a home." Pisangwing touched her sister's hand. "Sister, we are allowed to be happy again. Our husbands would want that." "How do you know what they would want?" "Because I knew Haehong. He loved me enough to want me to live, not just survive. She looked at James. You are a good man. You honor our ways. You see us as people, not as things to be conquered or pitied. Joaquinula wiped her eyes roughly. This is not simple. Nothing worth having is simple, James said. But I'm here. I'm staying. And I'm asking you both to let me in. Not as a guest anymore. As family. As, he swallowed hard, as something more. The silence stretched. Then Joaquinula's hand found his, her fingers threading through his. Go slow, she whispered. It hurts to hope. James squeezed gently. I'll die before I hurt you. Either of you. Taesong-wing smiled through her tears. Together then. The three of us together. Together, James agreed. The word became their promise, their prayer, their benediction. But peace, James had learned in the war, was always temporary. It came on a February dawn, 6 weeks after the blizzard, the sound of horses and rough voices. James was up instantly, rifle in hand. Through the teepee's entrance, he saw 5 men riding into camp. White men, trappers by the look of them, with the hard eyes of those who'd lived outside the law too long. The lead rider was massive, with a red beard and a scar running down his face. He pulled up near the teepee, where several other Lakota families were emerging, confused and afraid. Well, well, Redbeard said, his voice carrying. Heard there were some squaws alone out here. Looks like we found ourselves a winter camp. James's blood ran cold. He knew men like this, predators who saw native women as less than human, as objects to be taken. Joaquinula and Taesong-wing were awake now, reaching for their weapons. But James put a hand on Joaquinula's arm. Stay inside, he said quietly. Let me handle this. They are 5, you are 1. I've faced worse odds. He met her eyes. Trust me. He stepped outside, rifle loose in his hands, every sense alert. The other lodges had people emerging, 2 elderly couples, a family with small children. No warriors, just the vulnerable ones who'd stayed behind when the tribe moved on. Redbeard's eyes locked on James. Well, looky here, a white man playing Indian. I'm asking you, gentlemen, to move on, James said, his voice calm, but carrying the authority of his years as an officer. This is a peaceful camp. We don't want trouble. Trouble? Redbeard laughed. We're just being friendly. Thought these lonely ladies might want some company. His men laughed. One of them, a weasel-faced man with greasy hair, started to dismount. I said move on. James's tone dropped to ice. This is your only warning. Or what? You're one man. Redbeard's hand moved toward his gun. 1 soldier, James corrected. Captain James Thornton, 5th Ohio Infantry. I've killed more men than you've met in your miserable lives. I've walked through hell and come out the other side. You think 5 half-drunk trappers scare me? Something in his voice, the absolute certainty of a man with nothing left to lose and everything to protect, made Redbeard pause. But Weaselface wasn't as smart. His hand went for his pistol. James fired. The shot took Weaselface in the shoulder, spinning him around. Before the others could react, James had levered another round into the chamber, the barrel now trained on Redbeard's chest. Next one goes in something vital, James said. I suggest you collect your friend and leave, now. Behind him he heard the teepee flap open. Joaquinula and Taesong-wing stepped out, both armed. Then the elderly couples, carrying old rifles and bows. They might not be warriors, but they would fight for their home. Redbeard's eyes calculated the odds and found them wanting. He spat. "This ain't over." "Yes, it is. You ride out of here now, and you don't come back. Ever. Because if I see you anywhere near this camp again, I won't give warnings. Understood?" For a long moment, the morning balanced on a knife's edge. Then Redbeard jerked his horse's head around. "Get Wilkes up, we're leaving." The trappers rode out, Weaselface clutching his bleeding shoulder and cursing. James watched until they disappeared over the hill, his rifle never wavering. Only when they were truly gone did he lower the weapon. His hands, he noticed distantly, were shaking. Joaquinella touched his back. "You saved us. They'll tell others. You might have more trouble." "Then we will be ready." She moved to stand in front of him, her hand on his chest. "You stood between us and harm. You are not just a guest anymore, James Thornton. You are one of us. Mitakwie Oyasing, all my relations, family." The other camp members approached, the elderly grandfather speaking in Lakota. Joaquinella translated. "He says you have a warrior's heart. He asks if you will stay and help protect the camp." James looked around at their faces, these people who had nothing, who'd been left behind, who'd still chosen to welcome him, who'd become his family in the space of weeks. "I'll stay," he said, "for as long as you'll have me." Petasan Wing took his other hand. "Then we must make it official. Tonight we will have a ceremony. You will be adopted into our family. Our lodge will be your lodge." That evening, as the sun set in shades of gold and crimson, the small camp gathered. The grandfather performed the ceremony. Words in Lakota that James understood in his heart, even if not his head. They gave him a new name, Shunka Wakong King Hehong, the sacred dog who stands. It meant protector, guardian, one who would not abandon his post. When it was done, Joaquinella and Patesangwin led him back to their teepee. They sat around the fire, the three of them, and Joaquinella spoke. "In our way, a man can have more than one wife. It is not shameful. It is practical. Sisters often marry the same man so they can stay together, raise children together." James's breath caught. "What are you saying?" Patesangwin smiled. "We are saying we want you to stay. Not as a guest or a protector, as a husband, to both of us." James couldn't find words. "I'm honored, but I don't want you to feel obligated because I helped today." "This is not obligation." Joaquinella's eyes were fierce. "This is choice. We choose you. We choose life instead of just surviving. We choose to believe in joy again. We choose together." Sangwing added, reaching for his hand. James looked at their faces, at the hope and fear and courage written there. He thought about the fire he'd buried deep inside himself, all the capacity for love and tenderness and passion he'd walled off to survive the war. These women, these incredible, strong, beautiful women, were offering to help him excavate it, to bring him back to life. "Then I choose you too," he said, his voice rough. "Both of you, together." Joaquinella leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative. When she pulled back, Patesangwing took her place, her kiss sweeter, full of promise. "We go slow," Joaquinella said, echoing her earlier words. "We learn each other. We build something new from our broken pieces." "Slow is good," James agreed. "I'm not going anywhere." They sat together as the fire burned down, hands intertwined. Three people who'd found each other in the ruins of their old lives and chosen to build something new. Spring came gradually to the Dakota Territory. The snow melted, revealing brown earth that would soon turn green. The camp prepared for the season, repairing winter damage, planning for the summer hunt. James worked alongside the others, no longer an outsider, but a true member of the community. He taught the young boys to shoot and track. He helped the elderly grandfather with his horses. He became part of the fabric of their lives. But it was in the teepee with Wakingula and Psangwing that he found his truest self. They learned each other slowly, as promised. Wakingula's fierce loyalty and quick mind, Pitsangwing's gentle humor and deep wisdom, the way they finished each other's sentences and read each other's moods with a glance. And they learned him, his nightmares about the war, his grief for his lost family, his fear that he didn't deserve happiness. They met each wound with patience and understanding, helping him heal as he helped them. One warm April night, Pitsangwing began telling a story. In our tradition, there is a tale of Wope, the white buffalo calf woman. She came to our people when they were starving and gave them the sacred pipe, taught them to pray, showed them how to live in harmony. "Why are you telling me this?" James asked. "Because she came when we needed her most, and when she left, she told our people she would return in their darkest time." Pitsangwing smiled. "You came in our darkest time, James. The spirits sent you." "I'm no sacred being, just a man. You are exactly what we needed. A protector, a partner, a love we thought we'd lost forever." She took his hand. "The past months with you have been the happiest since our husbands died." Wakingula nodded. "You have helped us remember who we are, not just widows surviving, but women who can laugh and hope and love again." James pulled them both close. "You've saved me just as much. I was dead inside when I stumbled into your camp. You brought me back to life." "Then we are all healers," Wakingula said, "healing each other." That night, by firelight and with the spring wind singing outside, they celebrated their union properly, not just with words, but with touch, with tenderness, with the sacred intimacy of bodies and souls joining. James discovered the fire he'd buried deep inside himself, the capacity for passion and gentleness he thought the war had killed, and he found it was not diminished, but amplified by being shared between two hearts. In May, word came that Sitting Bull's band had crossed into Canada, seeking refuge from the U.S. Army. The news brought both relief and sadness to the camp. "We could go north," Wakingula said one evening. "Join them in Canada. Be with our people." "Do you want to?" James asked. She looked at Ptsangwing, a silent conversation passing between the sisters. Then back at him. "No, this is our home now. These people need us, and we need you. The army will keep pushing," James said seriously. "Eventually, they'll force all the tribes onto reservations. Then when that day comes, we will go together, the three of us. We will find a way to live with honor, no matter what the white government demands." Wakingula's eyes were fierce. "But we will not run out of fear. We will stay until staying is impossible." Pitsangwing added, "Besides, I am carrying a child. Our child. I want them born here, in the place where we found each other again." The words hit James like a thunderbolt. "A child?" She smiled, radiant. "Yes, due in late autumn." Joy exploded through James's chest, so intense it hurt. A child, a future, life continuing despite all the death and loss. He kissed Pitsangwing, then Wakingula, then pulled them both into his arms. "A child," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Our child. You will be a good father," Wakingula said. "I see how you are with the camp children, patient and kind." I'll try to be worthy of this, of all of you." "You already are," Pitsangwing assured him. "You chose us when the world said you shouldn't." You stayed when leaving would have been easier. That is worthiness. The summer passed in a golden haze of happiness. James hunted and provided. Joaquinella tanned hides and gathered medicine plants. But Songwing, her belly swelling, sewed baby clothes and sang the old songs. They had challenges, looks from passing white traders, questions from army patrols, the constant tension of living between two worlds. But they faced them together, presenting a united front. In September, during the harvest moon, Patezawing went into labor. James paced outside the teepee, anxiety eating at him. Childbirth was women's business, and he'd been banished along with the other men. But every cry from inside made his heart clench. Finally, after hours that felt like years, Joaquinella emerged. "Come meet your son." Inside, Patezawing lay on the buffalo robes, exhausted but smiling, a tiny bundle in her arms. James approached carefully, his hands shaking. The baby was perfect. Tiny fingers and toes, a crown of dark hair, eyes that seemed to look right into James's soul. "He needs a name," Patezawing said. "What should we call him?" James thought of his brother, of the promise he'd never kept. "Thomas, for my brother who died at Gettysburg, but also a Lakota name." Joaquinella considered. "Tatanka Ska, White Buffalo, for new beginnings and hope." "Thomas White Buffalo," James said, testing the name. "Yes, that's perfect." He took his son in his arms, this tiny miracle, this impossible gift. And as he held him, James felt the last of the ice around his heart melt away completely. The fire he'd buried deep inside himself blazed free at last, not destroying, but illuminating. Love for his wives, his son, his life. Love he'd thought he'd never feel again. "Thank you," he whispered to both women, "for finding me, for saving me, for showing me that life goes on." Joaquinella kissed his cheek. "We saved each other, my husband, all of us together." "Together," Patezawing echoed, her hand finding theirs. "Together," James agreed, looking down at the child in his arms. Their future, their hope, their promise that love could grow even in the hardest soil. Outside, winter was coming again to the Dakota Territory. But inside the teepee, around the fire, a family kept each other warm. A lonely soldier who'd found shelter, two Lakota widows who'd found love again, and a child who represented the possibility of a world where two cultures could meet not in violence, but in understanding. It wasn't the ending James had expected when he'd stumbled into camp a year ago, half frozen and hollow inside. But it was the ending he'd choose every time. Not an ending at all, but a beginning. The fire he'd discovered burned bright and true, lighting their way forward into whatever tomorrow might bring. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of James, Joaquinella, and Patezawing's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.